BK Maginnis, your Democratic candidate for U.S. Senate. Is there systemic racism? Absolutely. There is systemic racism in the U.S. And I'll go a step further and understand that I understand I have white privilege. And that is why I'm in this race. You know, systemic racism is not a Black issue. It is an American issue. Our systemic racism has led to many of the issues we have today, whether it's affordable housing, healthcare, student loans, or whatever else. Their roots are because we have not dealt with our racist historical past. There are two events or two things that actually inspired me to run and want to be a champion for racial inequality, which is my number 2 priority of my campaign after voting rights. The first is I have lived in North Carolina my whole life. I've got 16 years of North Carolina education. It wasn't until 2 or 3 years ago that I learned about the Wilmington Massacre of 1898. What happened was there was an uprising by white insurrectionists. They grabbed all the guns out of the armory. They killed 300 African Americans in Wilmington, and then drove out 2,000 else from the city. All the Black businesses were shut down. A biracial government in Wilmington at that point in time. It was called the North Carolina Fusion Party. That happened. That is the only coup that's ever happened on U.S. soil that was successful, and it's not in our history books. North Carolina, in 4th grade, you actually have a North Carolina history class where you learn nothing but North Carolina history. That's not in those books. In 2007, the North Carolina legislature actually proposed 2 bills. One, to reparations for those families. 2, to get that included in the curriculum, and it didn't even get out of committee. It didn't even get passed. How are our children supposed to know about racism or understand racism if we're not even being taught that history? And that's what the current book banning is coming from. They are trying to punish African Americans and their allies for the uprising during the George Floyd summer, because they can't look their children in the eyes and admit to them that there is a reason why those people should be uprising. The other event is Khalif Browder. If you've never heard about him, you need to go read about him. This is a young gentleman up in New York. He got arrested on some accusation, no evidence, no proof. He got held in a cell, and he was in jail for 2.5 years without a trial. They eventually got freed, but the mental damage from that, he ended up committing suicide several years later. And the reason why is because he wouldn't admit that he was guilty and plea bargained. He's like, I didn't do it. I'm not plea bargaining. That's systemic racism. That would never happen to me. And I realize that. And that's why I want to be a vocal leader, a vocal voice from that. It's an American issue. We need white people like myself to use we need to lead the charge on our own about that systemic racism. As far as the policing is concerned, I'm gonna piggyback. Actually, Michael Felder brought up a great thing, because that is actually one of the issues on my website, and I've talked about it extensively. Police officers who have at least 2 years of college education are 70% less likely to have misconduct. So what we need to do is not necessarily defund the police, but we need to refund the police. What we need to do is stop all the militarization of our police force that's unneeded, unwanted, cowboys playing with guns. Take that money, one, put it to social services and health services, dealing with things like drugs that police aren't equipped to do, aren't trained to do. And the other way is we go ahead and start giving police a raise. But here's the deal. You give them a raise if they graduate 2 years, 4 years of college. You pay for that tuition. You give them a raise for attaining that. And what that also does is if you offer that, then you are going to get better candidates if you have a raise, because they know it's going to be a livable job. So not only do you get a better current workforce, but then you're able to recruit people better into that. And so then you have things like, we talk about, I was asking another forum about, do I believe in no-knock warrants, whatever else? Well, you don't have that misconduct if you have a better educated police force. It's not a matter of defunding the police. It's about refunding the police, use those resources in a better way. I'm BK Maginnis, your Democratic candidate for U.S. Senate.